Okay, so hi everyone, welcome to the Edgelands Institute first Cafe Croissant. We are delighted to have you here. My name is Beatriz Botero. I am head of research. This is going to be a monthly series that we're going to start now and we're going to be having onwards. And the idea is to have really conversations with the audience and experts about different methodological tools to have an impact and drive social change and in our words, redraw our urban social contracts. With that said, I'm going to pass my coffee. I'm going to have my coffee and pass the mic to Eve, who will be moderating for us today. Eve, back to you.
Thank you so much, Beatrice, for this first coffee croissant. Hi, everybody. I'm Yves. I'm in Dakar. I'm right now based in Boston, and I am one of the founders of the Edgelands Institute. Maybe you know that the Edgelands Institute, the Agent Pop-Up Institute, has the ambitions to really reflect about how much social surveillance, but also COVID-19 is influencing our urban social contract. And to do so, we are deeply convinced that we need to put art at the core of what we do. Art and research, right? And it's or, and I think, and that's a critical element. And we will have, and we have a remarkable panel that will help us to explore, in fact, the relationship between art and research, between art, I would say, and policies, and how come that art is helping us to spark complex conversation. And here really my strong and our strong conviction is that you need to think about art not as an afterthought, oh, let's do an exhibition, oh, let's do something to show to the people what we're doing, but art really at the core of exploring and understanding what is the lived experience of the people, right? And we really want to use this hours, and it will be really an hour. We'll be careful, Beatrice, we are under your watch, so let's be clear that we will close it at 12 p.m. ET, and for the one who are in Europe at 5 GMT. We want to explore with a panel that comes with very different experience around that. And we would like also to explore that with you. So feel free also to ask questions, to comment in the chat. And I will make sure also to then give you the floor at any moment. Maybe just to try to frame it. We have two ambitions. One is really to allow us to understand the visions behind the relationship between art and research. And I really think the research in a broad sense. What is the relationship, how does it work? And the panelists will help us because they do have visions and they will see from different perspectives. And the other part will be maybe even more to zoom in, and that's the second objective, is to try to understand how art can then spark and help us to have complex conversation on very difficult issues, like, for example, digital transformation or social contract, digital surveillance. So I think that's what we are trying to do. At the beginning, the three panelists, and I will introduce them immediately, will just give their visions, kind of 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minute max. And then we will start the conversation, including to bring you in the conversation very quickly, as much as you want. Feel free about that. So maybe just to tell you how pleased I am to have three panelists that are coming from Singapore to start with. Yvette Sanchez. Yvette's very happy to have you around. Yvette, you are professor for Hispanic culture and society at the quite famous University of Singapore. And for the one who do not know, the University of Singapore it's a rather small, if I may say, university, but top university when it comes to economic, social science, management. And what is even more interesting with Yvette, and Yvette will tell us, Yvette is also the president of the Culture and Art Commission at the University of Singapore. And since, I would say, decades, the university have really thought about integrating art, not so much only in research, but in architecture, in the environment where the students are working. And she will tell us what is the experience, what does that mean, why university like Singapore that is somewhat focusing on management, business, and hard stuff, is bringing art at the core of its thinking, identity, and I think what is the experience they've gone through. The second panelist is Séverin Guelpa. Séverin, very happy to have you around. You are coming from Geneva. You have this amazing double hat. You are an artist yourself and a curator, which I found very interesting. You've worked a lot on issues related to, I would say, extreme territory. So you've went into desert, into a very hot area, into a glacier, very cold area, and always trying to draw your inspiration from these places to seek to understand what are the movement and the energy that you found there. But what I found extremely interesting is the combination of your art and your reflections, as allow, in fact, you always work with expert, local, international artists, local, international, bring people, trying to, in fact, bring through art, through these interventions, what are the issues of the very same territory, and possibly what are the solutions. And you will tell us more about the work you've done. And I think this is an interesting, a very, I would say, social, but also political artwork that you will explore that with you. And we're very happy to have you around. And the third person is Newman. For the one who know our ecosystem, including the Edgeland ecosystem, Newman is really at the core of what we've done over the last few weeks. So Newman is right now the Director of Art and Education at Meta Lab at Harvard. What is interesting is Newman works really at the on the social and cultural implication of new technology, which is so interesting, right? And you are looking at artificial intelligence, human-machine interactions. And what is amazing is you're using a creative workshop and interactive art to do so, right? And you have developed very interesting methodology. So we have, as you can see with us for our Café Croissant, 3 very different background, experience, and practice. And I'm sure we will see in our discussion some convergence, but also maybe some tensions around that. So last but not least, I just would like to address again to all, very happy to have you around. It is a Café Croissant, which is, it's intimate, it's a good conversation. There is no perfect truth. Feel free to be able to discuss, to challenge, to questions. I think it's great. And also maybe to bring forward your experience. So let's start with you, Newman. So Newman, 5 minutes to somewhat give us a bit of a frame of what is your vision when we discuss art and maybe research at large, and what does that mean? Please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to do something that has the theme of a croissant, which is a first for me in terms of my public presentations. And as I said in the chat, it's really nice to see both some familiar faces and also some new faces here. So thank you for coming. I know there's a lot of competition with all the things that are offered on Zoom, and we appreciate each of you being here. I'm going to run through some of my ideas and show a few slices of my work, and then hope that we take more of it into discussion later. So the topic of art and research, or art as research, is very dear to my heart, since it's the core of what I do, and it's the, if there's one hill I'm going to, die on, it might be that one, because I care so much about it. So I thought, I've been thinking about how to present this, and I thought I would maybe share some things that I think art can do. I also have quite a few notes of what art maybe isn't so good at doing, and maybe we can use the panel for that, just based on time here. Art can ask questions. I think art is actually one of the best ways to ask questions, and happy to discuss more about why that is. Part of it is in that art can invite more people into dialogue, or different people into dialogue, than other forms of research, like maybe some white papers that aren't necessarily super accessible to everybody or super inviting. Art, especially public art, especially interactive art, really brings in, can work with similar ideas, but bring in a different and broader audience. Art can transform physical, mental, and emotional space. Now, this is a tall order, but I believe it's true. It can certainly transform physical space, and that's fairly self-evident since it's visual and often physical. I guess digital art would not be the case, maybe if you made it a projection. It can transform mental space just based on how you, sorry, hold on, to cough. Okay, it's nice to have a mute button. That's different than being on a stage. Yeah, art can also transform mental space in the sense of how we're thinking about things, why we are approaching ideas in a certain way, what are our own biases or perspectives, and then emotional space. As I hope everybody here has experienced, art can be evocative and emotional, and we can learn from it and also learn about ourselves through it. So yeah, and then the last one, this one's a little long-winded, but I can be long-winded too, is art invites beauty, whimsy, and curiosity. It brings new perspectives together, and can make the commonplace mysterious. We're living in this, I feel like there's so many things about our world that if they weren't already part of our world, if we saw them, they would be so magical and mysterious. Like the fact that there's like birds flying around, for example. I mean, if we had never seen birds and birds didn't exist, and then you saw a bird, you would think you were hallucinating, because birds are really mysterious. And so are many of the things that we have in our world when we just look around the room, even before technology, but especially including new technologies. And I think art can kind of point out the mystery in the commonplace. So I probably won't get into showing you too much of my work because of time, but I can come back to it in the discussion. But just to give a little bit more about MetaLab, we are sort of a creative research lab that sits at the intersection of art, technology, and the humanities. And one of the things we do, and I do a lot of at MetaLab, is installation art that deals with new technologies. So you can see here on the screen a few glimpses of different projects that we've done over the years that are really, these are all dealing with the intersection of artificial intelligence and kind of social questions, but our work spans beyond that. And this is a quote that I go back to fairly often by Kevin Kelly, who many of you may know. He's a philosopher and historian of technology. And especially when it comes to technologies that are changing quickly, he says, the people who know the most about things are often the ones who get it most wrong. And the reason I include this here is because of the importance I see in bringing so many people into conversations about the societies we're creating, the cities we're creating, the technologies that we're using or building or choosing to not build. And the people that are always in the center of that are not the, excuse me, not the ones who have the best perspective or maybe the most wisdom. And I think art is a way to bring more folks into dialogue. Not to say there's not a place for experts. There is a place for experts, and I think there's a place for broader conversation, especially around technologies. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with is something we created collaboratively at the launch of Edgelands earlier this month. And we basically, I ran a little session where we invited everybody to submit a question about the future of cities based on their hopes and some other things that we had gone through. And then we combined in, live in real time, we combined these questions into this live data visualization, which you should be able to see on the Edgelands website, where at the bottom of the screen is actually all the questions overlapping, and they kind of make up a cityscape, but it's a co-created cityscape based on the questions that everybody submitted. And then as you watch it, the questions float up and you can read all the questions that were submitted. And I feel like this is like a small illustration of the ways in which kind of a creative visual work can bring voices together to ask big questions about society. Thank you, and I will pass it back to Eve for our next panelist.
Newman, thank you very much. Newman, can I just ask you questions before going to Yvette? I was really interested about everything, but what you just said about art, in fact, how do you find space? I just wondering if it's also transformed the space within the people.
Yes, I very much hope so. And again, not to say it should be prescriptive. I mean, that's another thing that's really nice about art is it's intended for people to have their own experiences with it. But I think the transforming emotional and mental space, especially my work, it's meant to be dialogical. I mean, that's one of the reasons I use so much text in my work and so many questions, is that I want individuals to be in dialogue with my work and to have an experience that leaves them feeling more curious and also surfacing some of their own insights and wisdom and ideas and perspective in a way that maybe they hadn't thought of before. I mean, that's a goal. I can't say that it always happens, but at least that's an aspiration.
That's just great, Newman. And we'll come back on that one. Especially, I would like to come back also on the quote you just gave before, because I think it's really one of the questions we do have at Edgeland, which is also how do we make sure that the people feel that they have expertise too when they talk about complex issue, all right? Because that is really one of the questions. There is a lot of people who feel I can't talk about it because it's too complex. And I think how do we do that? I think there is really something around here which is important. Great, Newman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yvette, you're coming from Singalan with, I would say, we'll see a different perspective, as we know. Maybe you say you would explain us a little bit how, what art has brought to this amazing university. Please, Yvette. Yvette, you're still on mute. You're still on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much, Yves, and thank you to everybody for having me, letting me participate in this pop-up initiative. I would love to react already to Newman because there are several parallels. I mean, I wrote down in the beginning when Yves said art helps research, I wrote down art is research, and then the first slide from Newman came, which said art as research. So I really like that. And there's several parallels already. So I get started. Okay, so in my case, how do art and architecture interact with the digital in our academic space in St. Gallen? Less digitized than one would expect. Question, is there, due to the pandemic, rather a search for physical proximity than for reflection on data protection or surveillance? I work at this business school, as you've said, in general, not a place of especially art-affine people, but at University of St. Gallen, every student has to study, besides the 5 possible majors in business administration, economy, law, political science, and computer science, mandatory 25% of their credits in cultural topics, humanities, and this is a lot. And along with this special curriculum, we have this omnipresent high caliber art pieces since 1961 in all our buildings, accompanying us in our daily routine in a very unsophisticated, discreet manner. They do not cry for attention. They are just there. You can perceive them or ignore them on the statement. When I interviewed a bachelor student yesterday evening on what the art pieces do to her, interestingly enough, she did not choose pieces which reflect the mainly digital work of her studies as her favorites, but the very physical presence of, for instance, is it big? Let's see.
Yeah, could you put it on full screen?
Now it's good.
Yeah, exactly, perfect, thank you.
So for instance, the physical presence of a Giacometti statue, a Calder mobile, or a group of 11 cement sculptures by Argentinian artist Alicia Penalba, not the transparency grenade by artist and critical engineer Julian Oliver from New Zealand, which is a small imitation of a Russian grenade able to hack students' and teachers' smartphones when passing by and directly beaming the contents of us transparent citizens on the wall. It was not by accident that at the very same time we had bought this piece reflecting the digitized work produced at our institution, as well as data protection, together with a huge figure from Joseph Son showing a worker who carries a whole life of physical work on his hunchbacked shoulders, a contrast or antidote to our current accelerated digital transformation, an analog counterposition, I guess. It is for the same reason that in our new learning center, a grid for digitized research and studies, the artist Maitu Perret from Geneva, Séverin might know her, chose to install a very physical haptic piece, a 60-meter long metal chain with 300 objects attached to it in the manner of a charm bracelet that represent parts of the body mainly having to do with thinking, research, learning, studies, thus ear, brain, eyes, lungs, hands, etc. The artist definitely wants this ex voto kind of piece to interact with the digital learning and teaching. The direct accessibility and physical proximity to the works, not a given because of their high monetary value at a public university, is unique in the world, also because of the trust-based security culture in this country. free access and very close to art, barrier-free at all times between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. for 9,000 students, 2,500 staff, and any St. Gallen citizen. Never ever in 60 years has anything happened to our art, fully integrated in the buildings, not exposed at all in a museum-like style. Students feel highly esteemed and respected through it, and they are proud of their art, and it definitely contributes to the corporate identification, or we might even say symbiosis, as our former rector's attitude shows on this snapshot. We would like to implement a position, Newman would be a perfect candidate to research the effect of art on people of our organization, as was done in former studies in other disciplines. For instance, medical students who visited extra courses in art history, definitely improved their capacity of diagnosis due to better skills of observation and perception. For our interviewed bachelor student in economy, art offers an inspirational source, different perspectives, as Calder or Felice Varini's Anamorphosis, makes the space more familiar, according to her, is never imposing, and I quote her, pushes her to reflect more, to experiment, and another quote, keeps curiosity awake. What more than this basic condition for research and studies? Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I just ask you one question before we go to Séverin?
Please. Yes.
It seems to me that that is something which is quite remarkable. Do you feel that the identity, it clearly have an impact on the student, and we will say more. Does it have also an impact on the teacher, on the professor?
Yes, on the teacher, on the staff, on research. And what I like of it is that it has such a long tradition, long before management studies implemented art in their research and education. So that's what I mean, the long tradition, I like it really. And of course, it has an influence, supporting ambivalence, supporting associative links, discovering hidden connections, and also, I think, really basic is the skepticism about the either or thinking if you live together with these pieces on a daily basis. Yeah.
Great, Yvette, thank you very much. We'll come back to that. I just saw for a moment one super interesting questions or comment from Jessica, and we'll ask her maybe to say that afterwards, which is also related to the fact that art in a space can change how people perceive themselves, right? Increase their self-respect. I think there is really something very powerful. We'll come back to that. Thank you very much. The third panelist, last but not least, Séverin Guelpa. You come with an interesting perspective as artist and curator, bringing a lot of artists together to work very concretely on sometimes difficult issues. Tell us more. We're very pleased to see you here. You're coming from Geneva. Séverin, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you you all to letting me sing a few words. Definitely I should have come with some picture, because I've been an artist working in different parts of the world. Really interesting by threatened territories, endangered territories in the world. But I think in 5 minutes, I would have spent all my time by explaining you the picture and the place. So it wasn't the point I wanted to focus on. I come, as you said before, I come from the political sciences before being an artist. So pretty quickly after my studies, when I was in my studio, I was wondering about what I wanted to do as an artist. And I said, it's definitely not in my studio that thing will happen, but I need to go out and go to the field, go to different territories, meeting people, thinking together about social, environmental issues. That was really the thing I wanted to do as an artist. Being interested by process that artists can bring to different fields instead of producing pieces for a gallery. So I'm still a bit in between, and I'm still working for different institutions, but I'm really excited by considering the arts as a space for experimentation. This is really what excites me every day. I do remember, because we were talking about the connection, what can art bring to the scientist? And I think this is an important question. I do remember in 2017, I was in the Mojave Desert in the United States, and I was leading a workshop with the University of Arizona with an anthropologist. And Marco Johnson, that was his name, was a specialist of common good process, and he was working on the water issues in the city of Mexico. And I do remember well, he came back to me and said, "Oh, Séverin, you know, we need to work together. I need to work with artists, because I got the feeling that as a researcher, as a scientist in the field, when I'm doing studies, I'm missing, in a way, I'm losing a part of the complexity of situation." And the second comment or remark he did was that he was a bit disappointed about the people he addressed his paper. He said, I'm paid by the university to produce paper and research, but I don't really know who's gonna read it. And if the people I've been working with in the field in Mexico will read it, because inhabitants of the cities will never read paper done by the University of Arizona. And this is, it brings to my mind two really important aspects of what art can bring to scientists. The first one is we're a bit like specialists of emotion. As you say, Sarah, before, we are not, artists won't bring solution. Artists are done to open windows, to ask questions, and to translate ideas through feelings, instead of doing it through paper, research, or academic research. And it's something really important, because emotion is a real power. And then art become a real power as well in the context of democratization or vulgarization of research, of academic work. This is something really important. Immersion by artists needs lots of time, mean that you need to meet people, that you need to understand, that you need to focus on the, I would call it the weak side of the society or of the world in a way. So this is something for me important. Artist is basically free in his methodology, in his way of doing. So we can really, you know, our job is kind of permanent experimentation of what we want to do. And then it brings the idea of taking time or going to the field, of meeting people. This methodology, I think, can bring a lot to the academic world. No way. The world is complex, and no good answer can be brought if we don't mix emotion, also, I mean, answer solution that goes through the head, through the brain, but at the same time through feeling. It means who speaks to the body, who speaks to the. We saw what happened during the coronavirus, and we saw what happened in the United States in the last month. I mean, people in a way need to reconnect with some strong feeling, or need feelings to understand the complexity of the world. And this is, I mean, something really important for an important play that artists have to be conscious of. The second thing that is for me important is the idea of collective intelligence. I came from the social sciences, went to art, so the limit of the art production of the arts reflection when artists stay together. And then I think it starts to be interesting when you start to mix languages, when you start to mix people together, when you put this matter, you know, we have a long tradition of collective intelligence in Switzerland, in the mountain. And it's something that touched me because I think, yeah, only this way can really open some new way of interpreting the world or some scientific or social issues. So the process has to be really part of art, and well, I can see it. I can see it in the population around me. There's really more and more people coming from different fields that reconsider the role, the play of arts in terms of bringing original solution to some more scientist or social aspect or issues. And this is two elements that I wanted to focus on, to bring to the discussion, because for me it's important.
Great, and Séverin, maybe just one more, and then we open the panel. Tell me, because you've also intervened. You talk about the researcher, you talk about the people. You also somewhat worked with the government and politicians and public officials. Do you feel that somewhat they are more receptive to art? What is your experience?
Yeah, I think, well, everything takes a long time. I think lots of work. It's kind of a mutual enrichment that take lots of energy. But yes, of course, I think, well, we are in the global situation where nobody has answer to nothing anymore. We are just a bit lost. So it can be problematic, but it can be as well a good opportunity to think in a different way. And in this context, I think art can bring a lot in terms of experimental aspect of working. You know, artists have always been working with a certain frugality. No money, no specific constraints. So it's a power as well, I would say.
Great, thank you. So my first questions, and I will then to bring, I saw there was a super interesting questions from Adriana. So, but before doing that, just my question, I really would like to come back, and Newman, we start with you, and then, you know, feel free, the other panelists to step in. It's really the questions that both of you, Yvette and you, Newman, but also somewhat Séverin, saying, no, it's not art and research or art helping research. Art is research. Could you just, because I think it's a critical element, could you just maybe in few words tell us a bit more? What does that mean? And how do we have to somewhat to understand that? And I would like also to ask Yvette to say a few words around that. Please, Newman.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, it's meant to be a little bit provocative, art as research, because it's not how we normally think about art. Often art, as you said, as all of you have said, but Yves, as you started with at the beginning, sometimes comes after, almost as an illustration rather than, you know, knowledge production itself. And this move, thinking about art as research, is really thinking that the process, you know, artistic practice can produce new forms of knowledge, can surface different insights. It requires research. You know, not every art practice, but, you know, I guess the kind of art I'm speaking about and the kind of art I practice is it requires research. It itself is a form of research. And then it might beget further, you know, further insights or research or writing.
Yeah. And you really you even talk about knowledge production, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting. Yvette, art as a research?
Yes, I think most of the emerging artists, the younger artists, consider themselves as researchers. Most have, as Séverin, like a double-bind career. They're also academics. I mean, it's a fluid back and forth, and the sectors are not separated as before anymore. I mean, also, all the young artists go to academies. I mean, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, going to an academy for an artist was just a failure, you know. I mean, it was just the inspiration, and no. But today, it's part. I mean, for me, it's it's fluidness, and if you take the research in our university, above all business research management, I mean, they have in the last decade totally integrated art in their education and in their activities. I mean, you have Swisscom here in Switzerland having a workshop at the dance factory in Zurich, and at the end of the workshop they have to dance their presentation, etc., or they have to direct an orchestra, a real orchestra, to learn leadership, etc. So I mean, the sectors are not separated anymore. They really come together. I think that's an evolution, a paradigm change in the last 10 years, and the same goes for students. I mean, I tell you, like 20 or 30 years ago, St. Gallen students didn't even see the art pieces. You know, I make a tour for alumni, and they just open their eyes for the first time because they haven't seen the Giacometti or the Richter or whatever. And today they all know about the art. I mean, a first impulse might have been that the art market is so crazy and business students get interested and open their eyes, but I don't mind why they open their eyes. They just look at it and take it as a part, and it gets more and more important for them. So, you know, I constantly ask the students, as this student yesterday, what does it do with you? What does this piece do with you, etc.? Because I'm so interested in that.
Even just an anecdote on that one, and stop me if I can talk about it. I do know that some of the art piece in University of St. Gallen, of course, their price has.
It's terrible, yeah.
Terrible, right?
But we will. I mean,
just 1 minute.
That's another thing. That's another thing.
How do you resist as a?
Yes, we resist. I just got. Let me tell you, I got the third phone call from Sotheby's, from the Sotheby's Europe and Sotheby's Switzerland. They absolutely want to buy our Gerhard Richter, but we won't sell it. We even put it in the university law. All our pieces are not for selling, which is, of course, you have to, I mean, you know, the prices they offer us from Qatar, etc., via Sotheby's, that's terrible. But we don't sell art in order also to show the students and the researchers of a business school, art is not only an investment asset. It's so really something else, and they got it, you know. I mean, it's easy to tell them.
Séverin on that one, and then I would like to talk methodology and then open the floor. So, Séverin?
Yeah, no, just to insist on what you were saying, Yvette, you're right. When you see the policy or public fund supporting art in different countries, it's super interesting to see how it evolved. Then a few years ago, you were really, you know, buying pieces that was then part of a fund, of a patrimonial. So you were really selling, paying the piece of the artist. And now the support are much more based on grants, on process, on curating, you know. So we really move from a logical of paying, putting money to have really materialistically pieces into more process-based research, and it shows that, well, yeah, the important.
I tell you, the art committee in the 60s and 70s, they just bought the pieces to embellish the architecture and made art pour l'art, you know, nothing else. But today we have moved to students, moved to people. The students are in the committee, and it's about people and how they interact with the pieces, you know. It's really, that has really changed in the last.
That's quite amazing. Newman, I would like now to start to explore a bit, because you mentioned that, the three of you, the importance of methodology, right? And I really would like to grasp it. Are you talking about kind of methodology for yourself, or to share that and, you know, in a way to give a methodology that other can be inspired by? I mean, I really would like to tell us a bit more about how methodology seems to be a critical factors of the work you are doing.
Can I ask you what you mean now by methodology?
Let's see what Newman is telling us. Right, Yvette, let's be challenged by Newman.
Sure, and then I'll also be excited to jump into some of the points in the chat, including that Jess yelled, Séverin, just put your website there so that folks who didn't get to see your work get to see it now. So there's a good conversation happening there as well. It's actually one of the benefits of working in this like very strange disembodied place, is we can have like multiple channels of conversation that surface different you know, personalities and perspectives, and you know, have links at hand and all of that. So, you know, when I talk about methodology, probably like art is a pretty broad thing that could be defined in a bunch of different ways. I specifically use methodology to refer to some things that I've created in the form of teaching and integrating artistic practice into teaching. So my kind of pedagogical innovation or methodology is I do a lot of guest teaching in subjects that are wildly separate from art, and with mostly students and professionals and others who don't make art. They don't necessarily know much about it, and they certainly don't think that they have any skill in it. And so, what I've created is a sort of a flow that's really focused on asking questions and prioritizing the asking of questions and showing that contemporary art and successful art, in my view, starts with good ideas. It doesn't have to be that. There's lots of different kinds of art. I don't want to exclude any, but people that are thinking about hard topics, like last week, I did one of these for a human rights seminar, for pretty advanced scholars in human rights. And, they're actually physically sculpting things about the challenges in sort of theories of human rights and the conflicts specifically between, theory and practice in human rights frameworks. So what happens with my methodology, and I'm writing about this now and we'll be publishing later this year, is starting with questions and creating space for folks to generate questions. And then usually they work with physical objects, although that's not always the case, but even in Zoom, it's been really fun to source physical objects from wherever you're located and physically construct something. It's not meant to be super, visually, I don't know, beautiful necessarily, but they're certainly interesting. And, what happens is that you see the same problem space, but with different contours, and maybe find some metaphors and certainly find a way to talk about things that you previously maybe had been talking about differently. So that's my methodology. I'm curious other folks' methodologies on the panel, and also, what people in the audience think.
Great, thank you, Newman. That was super clear. Séverin, on the methodology, because you spoke quite a bit about that too. I'm interested to hear a bit more about that. And then I really would like, I mentioned it already, to maybe open, because there is some interesting question in the chat. So Séverin?
Yeah, well, it depends if I speak in terms of my own work or in terms of, curatorial work, because it may change a little bit. But what I really do and like is really considering all aspect of my work or my process based on the experimentation of certain territories. It's really, my whole practice is based to a reflection about social or environmental issues of different spaces. So I go to the field, but then what is really important is to experiment the place where you live in. If I interested by threatened territories such as glacier or desert without water, is because it pushes you to your limit in a way. When you live in a desert without water, it means that you got to count and rationate all the water you drink. When you're on a glacier, you need to walk during hours to access this bed. So the physical relationship between your body, yourself as an artist, and the context or the size of the environment you are, push you to a certain inspiration, push you to your limit, push you to something really interesting.
I'm just sharing your work.
Yeah, I should have come with, this is well, actually, this is on a glacier. If you can see it, this is on a glacier in Switzerland. And the goal of so it was a 2 weeks residency, and we slept half on the glacier in camping tents and half on a mountain cabin. So the general condition was pretty hard, pretty tough. But the main idea, for example, as in terms of methodology for this experiment, was to ask the people to come only with what they can carry with, So I asked the people to think before climbing the glacier and climbing the mountain, to put all their stuff in the backpack, and then finally to go to a very minimalistic work, because you don't have other accessories or other stuff to work with. you go to the point, or you go to the essence, you focus on the very interesting, important stuff, because you don't have anything. And this kind of floating or flying structure has been made with dustbin plastic, bags of the mountain cabin we were living in. So it's, a kind of low-tech way of thinking, solution to the world, or really simple gesture, bringing really fundamental stuff to some really simple aspect.
Great, thank you very much, Séverin. And sorry, just to bring some of part of your art, but I think it's important for the people to understand what is the methodology. Adriana, can I ask you, we have come a bit more than 10 minutes. I would like to bring some of the people to ask questions. I've seen you, Yvette, but then Yvette, 20 seconds, and then I would like to open to Adriana. Please, Yvette.
Because I have one to share too, which goes beyond the illustration, metaphorization of ideas in research and teaching. This is one from 2005, when Daniel Liebeskind, the architect, came to St. Gallen and worked with the first semester students and created the city of the future, sort of a utopia, but not in a concrete way of building parks or streets or whatever, but he worked with a carpenter from Appenzell, and they created a huge panorama of how designing utopia, how a future urban society as a mental image, as was said before, the mental and the physical image of a social city would come out. And I think this is terrific. A student, a management student, business student, law student comes to university, and that's what he has to do in his first week. So I think this is one.
Thank you.
One interactive thing.
Adriana, you had super interesting questions around, in fact, community-based interactions with also the community and all that. Adriana?
Yeah, thank you for this presentation, everyone. Something I think a lot about is just like memes as a form of art, especially in terms of breaking down barriers or having conversations and dialogues about what's going on in the world. And how they're so accessible, like you open your phone and there is a meme on like almost every form of social media, really. So I would love to hear presenters' thoughts on having these conversations through memes, and maybe like the pros and cons of it. I can definitely see the pros as being it's so accessible, but perhaps some cons are that it's turning art into like this very bite-sized sort of thing that. Or maybe that's good. I don't know. Like my mind is like, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, maybe it's neither of them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Great. Fantastic. I'm just asking the panel, please keep this question in mind. I would like to bring two voices. So we have a first set of different voices. I would like to bring Ines. Ines, you had very interesting questions around communication, and I think which is a super important issue. Please go ahead, Ines.
Okay. Hi everyone, thank you for have opportunity to stay in this wonderful presentation. Your work are all wonderful. My question is about communication. I come from the background of communication, and I think it would be very important to make bridges between communication and art. I know that art is essentially communication, okay? But I think we have so different ways to communicate today in the digital world. And so maybe if you can be more in contact and talk about this possibility, it would be great. It's only an idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ines. Super question. And a third question, and then please, if somebody has other questions or comment, let me know in the chat. I'll bring you afterwards. I think it was you, Jessica. I think you were one of the persons that really spoke about the questions and the relationship of art, architecture, and self-respect. Maybe you want to say a word on that one, Jessica?
Sure, yeah. Thank you very much for this fascinating presentation. Thanks to all the panelists. I was really just reflecting as Yvette was sharing about how they use art in the public spaces at St. Gallen, to think about, how the structures of public space and the processes that we put on for events can change how people feel about themselves and then change the substance actually of what they contribute. So, you know, I think we can think about art in public space as sort of as a way of demonstrating respect for the intellectual and creative engagement of the people who will visit that space, telling them that we believe that they will appreciate and can engage with things at this level, which then inspires them to go ahead and do that, right? Versus be passive consumers or you know, passive recipients, people on whom laws are imposed, norms are imposed. I think we can also think about it in terms of event design. You know, I think, for example, in this Zoom meeting, having different folks being able to use the chat simultaneously to express views creates a space where people, in addition to the presenters, are welcomed to contribute. Or the way when we're able eventually to get back into physical space again, the kinds of like hospitality that are provided for folks when you have in-person meetings can help ease people's participation, show respect, and help them see themselves as sort of crucial contributors. So those are some of the thoughts that I was having, but I'm really just loving this presentation and loving everyone's interventions.
Thank you so much. I think we have again 3 very interesting perspective and questions. Newman, let's start with you. You can pick and choose because I think the 3 somewhat are combined, right? Please start.
Thanks. I see we just have a few minutes left, so I will take 90 seconds and then I'll pass it along and we can see what we do. So of course, all of these comments and questions deserve a lot more time, but Adriana, to your question about memes, I think it's a terrific question. Especially I think immediately about like the darker side of memes and when it really speaks to sort of broader risks with online communication, especially when, you know, elicits our most tribal instincts. So I'm happy to think of memes as a form of art. As I said earlier in the chat, I have a very inclusive view of art and I find that works just perfectly well for me. But I do think that the sort of distance that people have from the creation when things are sort of, it depends on the kind of meme you're talking about, I guess. So like, you know, some of the stuff that, you know, is hateful or racist or making fun, I think is really problematic, obviously. And I think things that are like funny and playful and co-created and passing around the internet are super interesting and less about, you know, the identity of the creator, which I think is really valuable. On to Inez's point, one thing I'll just highlight that I said in the chat too is I think communication and communicating about one's work is so important, maybe too important nowadays in the arts in a way that it wasn't in other historical.
Sorry, what do you mean say too important? Is it negative?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're almost overly profiling for people who are very, you know, outspoken and extroverted and good communicators about their work in a way that I think is kind of unfair to some artists who are probably more talented, you know, than me and other people that aren't necessarily inclined to speak on a panel or aren't necessarily super articulate or work in a more intuitive way. And so I think, Inez, to your point, I think it would be great to find pairs of, you know, people that are into communication or spokespeople and that are finding artists that really can speak on, you know, about their work. And that happens sometimes. As I see among my artist friends, it seems like it falls really unfairly. I'm very grateful that I like talking and I studied philosophy and I can get into debates. And I also like making work, but I do think we're almost overly profiling for that. And then Jess, yes, 100%. I'll just leave it there for now.
Séverin and then Yvette.
Yeah, well, about the communication aspect, I was wondering a lot about how to do it when I was lost in the desert or on the glacier or wherever in the world, because, you know, you cannot get the proximity with the audience, with the public as you want to do, or you could do it in an exhibition space. But this is exactly what we've been living with the coronavirus during the last months. I mean, all the institution and work exhibition space has to close. And I think that the strong relationship between the pieces exhibited, we know the audience has to be really close to or live inside an exhibition to really feel an artwork in its globality. I mean, we've been dealing with internet and social network during all this last month, and people have been asking artists to find solutions to reinvent the way of communicating, and that's great. I mean, it's a bit of work as an artist to reinvent the way of showing our art, but it has its own limits at the same time, and it's pretty difficult to communicate or to share a feeling or work through a screen. I mean, so yeah, it's.
Thank you, Séverin and Yvette. I think there was a specific question around, and just Jess had to leave, but maybe you want to say a few words around the question. Yvette, you are still on mute. You're still on mute.
The one of Jessica was about respect, and I think respect leads to independence. In the case of students, for instance, they're having several initiatives, independent initiatives, and a sort of a domino effect. They create a club which is called Pro Arte to support art issues and make their own events. And also we are in the middle of an art competition of St. Gallen students who are producing art, and they will be exposed. And to the other questions, I have a nice project which wasn't realized by Julian Oliver, the New Zealander, for the questions about social media and communication. Besides the transparency grenade, the alternative proposal was to create a circle of stone stabs, diameter of 6 meters, with little antennas let in the floor, in the grass outside the university building, 6 meters. And if students stepped in there, or teachers or researchers stepped in there, they were totally void of any reception of any of the virtual world, no phones, no nothing. I mean, it was just void, and this is more illegal than the transparency grenade. It would have created even, and that was a surprise for me, it would have created even more difficulties of the legal stuff, because it's totally forbidden due to security reason to create such a zone of non-waves, of nothing, you know. So that would have created the real problem, legal problem. And I think it's a good metaphor for the communication, social media question.
Yvette, Séverin, thank you very much. I think you've done an amazing work. I don't know how it is for the other people. I have learned a lot already, which is quite amazing. Thank you. Please join me to just thanks the panel. This is really amazing. And this is exactly what we would like to do. So you will see us doing that more, having the time to also explore more issues over time. I think it's really fantastic. So thank you again. Thank you to everybody. Thanks to the panel. Beatrice, back to you to close. You know, we're almost on time. Beatrice.
Thank you, everyone. This was fascinating. I posted on the chat the link to our mailing list in case you want to stay informed of what we're doing. We are really trying not to email you too much, so don't worry. It's not one of those mailing lists that will drive you crazy. But these will be monthly conversations that we'll be hosting, and it'll be great for you to join us on the next one. You can also email us and let us know what things you'd like us to discuss. It is a conversation, and it should be both ways. And you can also follow us on social media. And we're only 2 minutes late, so I'm gonna stop now. Thank you very much. It was lovely to see you, and we hope to see you soon again. And thank you to the speakers. It was fascinating. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks to the co-panelists and everybody for having us, and all of your fantastic questions.
Thank you to the people who were great.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.